World War I began in August 1914, plunging Europe into a conflict that claimed millions of lives. Governments on both sides used propaganda to sustain morale, promising soldiers swift victories and humane treatment if captured. German leaflets, circulated in 1915, depicted prisoners of war in camps like Holzminden, lounging with books and playing games, suggesting compliance with the 1907 Hague Convention, a precursor to the Geneva Convention. British propaganda countered with images of well-fed POWs in Rulebon, implying their camps were models of care. These images aimed to reassure families and maintain public support. Yet the reality was far grimmer. Red Cross inspections, detailed in their 1915 to 1918 reports, exposed widespread violations. Camps like Wittenberg and Holzminden were overcrowded, with prisoners facing starvation and disease. German records from 1915 confirm over 20,000 Allied POWs suffered malnutrition, some receiving only 800 calories daily, far below survival needs. This documentary introduces James Carter, a composite character inspired by real British POWs like Captain Robert Campbell, whose memoirs describe brutal conditions. James, a young infantryman, represents the thousands captured during battles like the Somme in 1916. Propaganda promised him fair treatment, but reality delivered a different fate. Why did governments spread such lies? The answer lies in wartime strategy. Leaders needed civilians to believe in humane treatment to justify conscription and war bonds. Admitting the truth, starvation, typhus outbreaks, and neglect risked undermining morale. At Wittenberg, a 1915 typhus epidemic killed 1,500 prisoners, a fact German authorities concealed, claiming their camps were civilized. Red Cross reports from 1916 note that only 30% of inspected camps met basic humanitarian standards, revealing a systemic failure. The tin cup, a simple object issued to POWs, became a symbol of their struggle. It held meager rations, watery soup, or ersatz coffee, barely sustaining life. James's story begins with his capture at the Somme, where German soldiers promised adherence to international laws. Instead, he endured a grueling train journey to Holzminden, packed into cattle cars with no food or water for days. His experience, drawn from memoirs like Campbell's, mirrors thousands of others. The Hague Convention required adequate food and shelter, yet prisoners often slept on straw in unheated barracks, with temperatures dropping below freezing. German camp logs, declassified post-war, reveal that Holzminden held 3,000 prisoners in spaces meant for 1,500, leading to rampant disease. Propaganda's false promises extended beyond Germany. British newspapers claimed their camps treated German POWs with dignity, yet reports from the International Committee of the Red Cross noted similar issues in some Allied camps. Like overcrowding at Douglas on the Isle of Man, the gap between propaganda and reality was universal, driven by the need to control narratives. For posts like James, the tin cup was a daily reminder of broken promises. It held not just food, but the weight of survival, as prisoners traded scraps or used it to barter for warmth. This chapter sets the stage for their untold stories, asking a critical question: how could the Hague Convention's protections fail so spectacularly? The answer lies in the chaos of war, inadequate oversight, and the prioritization of victory over humanity. James's journey, grounded in real accounts, reveals the stark truth hidden behind wartime myths. The Battle of the Somme began on July 1, 1916, marking one of World War I's deadliest days. British military records confirm 57,470 casualties on the first day, with thousands captured by German forces. James Carter, a composite figure inspired by real POWs like Lieutenant John Ransom, was among them. Knee-deep in trench mud, he surrendered to German soldiers who promised humane treatment under the 1907 Hague Convention. Propaganda had assured him of fair conditions, but reality was different. Stripped of his gear except a tin cup, James boarded a cattle car for a 48-hour journey to Holzminden camp. Red Cross reports from 1916 described these trains as overcrowded, with no food or sanitation, leaving prisoners dehydrated and weak. At Holzminden, James faced his first interrogation. German officers, trained to extract tactical details, demanded information on British positions. His silence, echoed by many POWs, led to threats of solitary confinement. Bundesearchiv records show Holzminden held 3,200 prisoners in facilities designed for 1,500. causing immediate strain. Overcrowding fueled tensions, with French, British, and Russian POWs struggling to communicate. Rations were meager, often just 200 grams of black bread and watery soup daily, far below the Hague Convention's standards. Yet, small acts of humanity broke through. A German sergeant, perhaps softened by the war's toll, offered James weak coffee in his tin cup, a gesture noted in memoirs like Ransom's. Another guard allowed him to keep a family photo, defying protocol. These encounters shaped prisoners' early experiences. Language barriers and cultural mistrust heightened fear, yet some guards showed restraint. Why did compassion emerge amid cruelty? The answer lies in the war's chaos and individual discretion. Camp oversight was inconsistent, with Red Cross inspections in 1916 noting violations of Article 7, which required adequate food and shelter. James's tin cup, filled with bitter ersatz coffee, became a symbol of survival. It held not just sustenance but defiance, as prisoners clung to small routines. Memoirs describe POWs trading bread for tobacco, using tin cups as currency. The contrast between promised care and actual neglect defined these first days. James's experience, grounded in real accounts, reflects the resilience of thousands facing a system that often ignored their humanity. In Holzminden camp in 1916, daily life for James Carter and thousands of other prisoners of war was a relentless struggle. German camp logs, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, outline a grueling schedule. At 5:30 a.m., prisoners gathered in freezing courtyards for roll call, clutching tin cups for a thin serving of barley soup or ersatz coffee. Red Cross reports from 1916 reveal rations often provided just 700 calories daily, far below the 1,500 needed for basic survival. Overcrowding exacerbated misery. Holzminden, built for 1,500 speed, held over 3,200 prisoners, leading to unsanitary conditions. Latrines overflowed, and a typhus outbreak killed 200 prisoners that year. According to International Committee of the Red Cross records, survival required resourcefulness. Inspired by accounts like Captain Robert Campbell's memoirs, POWs developed a barter system. Bread, worth its weight in gold, was traded for tobacco or scraps of cloth, with tin cups serving as measures. James, a composite figure based on real British prisoners, joined these exchanges, swapping half his soup for a pencil to sketch memories of home. Those memories, Sunday roasts, his mother's garden, or his sister's laugh, were lifelines. Letters from home, heavily censored, arrived. Red Cross reports note that only 40% of relief parcels reached prisoners, often looted by guards. When parcels did arrive, they contained tinned beef or biscuits, shared among men to stretch supplies. Daily routines were punctuated by hardship. Morning inspections were followed by forced labor, such as clearing rubble, with guards quick to punish. Memoirs describe beatings for minor infractions, like failing to salute. Yet, prisoners found ways to resist. Some organized secret theater performances in barracks, reciting Shakespeare from memory to boost morale. Others brewed tea from weeds, boiled in tin cups over smuggled candles. Cultural tensions arose. French prisoners argued with British over food distribution, but acts of solidarity emerged. James shared his tin cup's contents with a weakened French comrade, a gesture repeated across camps, as noted in POW diaries. The tin cup was more than a tool. It held meager rations but also hope, a tangible link to survival. Prisoners used it to measure, barter, or even carve initials, preserving identity. Red Cross inspections in 1916 highlighted violations of the Hague Convention's Article 7, which mandated adequate food and hygiene. Holzminden's conditions in heated barracks, lice-infested straw beds fell far short. Why did these routines matter? They gave structure to chaos, helping prisoners like James maintain dignity. Clinging to memories of home, they wrote letters they might never send, using scraps of paper. The tin cup, dented and worn, became a symbol of resilience, holding not just food, but the will to endure. James's story, rooted in real accounts, reflects the quiet strength of thousands who survived by blending ingenuity with hope. In Holzminden camp in 1916, the tin cup was a humble but vital object for James Carter and thousands of other prisoners of war. Issued upon arrival, it was their only tool for receiving rations, often just 200 grams of black bread and watery soup daily. As documented in Red Cross reports, far beyond its practical use, the tin cup became a symbol of survival, hope, and defiance. James, a composite figure inspired by real POWs like Captain Robert Campbell, clung to his cup as a lifeline. Memoirs from the period, such as Lieutenant John Ransom's diary, describe prisoners carving initials into their cups, reclaiming a sense of identity in a place designed to erase it. The cup was a constant in a world of uncertainty, holding not just food but memories of home. The tin cup's role extended to survival tactics. Red Cross inspections in 1916 noted that only 40% of relief parcels reached prisoners, often looted by guards. When parcels arrived, containing tinned beef or biscuits, POWs used their cups to share portions, fostering camaraderie among British, French, and Russian prisoners. James once traded half his soup, measured in his tin cup, for a pencil to sketch his mother's garden. Such bartering, detailed in Campbell's memoirs, was common, with cups serving as makeshift scales. Prisoners also improvised, boiling weeds for tea in their cups, using smuggled matches, a practice Ransom recorded. These acts of ingenuity turned the cup into a tool of resilience. The tin cup also played a role in quiet resistance. POWs hid notes, tools, or even dirt from escape tunnels inside their cups, risking severe punishment. German camp logs, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, document cases of prisoners beaten for concealing items, yet the cup's simplicity made it an unlikely suspect, allowing small acts of defiance. Why did this object hold such power? It provided structure in chaos, a tangible link to a life beyond barbed wire. When James sipped bitter ersatz coffee, he recalled his mother's kitchen, a memory that fueled his endurance. The Hague Convention's Article 7 mandated adequate food and shelter, but Holzminden's conditions overcrowded barracks, rampant life fell short. The tin cup, dented and worn, became a symbol of humanity's persistence. For James, the cup was personal. He etched a small cross into its rim, a private ritual inspired by real POW accounts. It held not just rations but hope, a reminder of a world worth surviving for. Sharing its contents with a weakened comrade, as many did, built bonds across nationalities. Red Cross reports highlight how such acts countered the dehumanization of camp life. The tin cup, though ordinary, was a beacon of defiance, proving that, even in the darkest moments, prisoners could preserve their dignity. James's story, rooted in rarefied memoirs, reflects the countless POWs who turned a simple object into a symbol of unbroken spirit. By late 1916, James Carter's time in Holzminden camp had pushed him to the edge. The relentless grind of starvation and disease, documented in Red Cross reports, eroded his hope. German camp logs, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, show that Holzminden's 3,200 prisoners received as little as 600 calories daily, barely enough to sustain life. The 1907 Hague Convention's promise of humane treatment felt like a cruel lie. James, a composite figure inspired by real POWs like Captain Robert Campbell, grappled with despair. A typhus outbreak in 1916, detailed in Red Cross records, claimed 200 lives, leaving survivors like James haunted by the faces of fallen comrades. Nights in the lice-infested barracks brought doubts. Would he ever see home? Could he endure another winter? The tin cup, holding watery soup, seemed a mocking reminder of broken promises. The crisis deepened when James witnessed a fellow prisoner collapse during roll call, too weak to stand. German guards, as noted in camp logs, beat him for failing to comply, a common punishment. Memoirs like Lieutenant John Ransom's describe such moments as tests of will. James questioned whether survival was worth the suffering. Yet, a turning point emerged in a secret meeting. Under cover of darkness, POWs gathered in a barracks corner, whispering plans for an escape tunnel. They used tin cups to scoop and hide dirt, a tactic Ransom's diary confirms. James joined, his hands trembling as he filled his cup with earth. The risk was immense. Guards patrolled nightly, and failed escapees faced solitary confinement or worse. As documented in 1916 Red Cross reports, why take such a chance? The answer lay in defiance. The act of digging, however futile, restored purpose. Reflection shaped James's resolve. He realized survival was not just about living but resisting dehumanization. The tin cup, once a symbol of scarcity, became a tool of rebellion. Each scoop of dirt it held was a step toward freedom, a rejection of the camp's brutality. Campbell's memoirs note similar moments, where POWs found strength in collective action. James thought of his family, picturing his mother's garden, a memory he etched into his cup's rim. This mental anchor, common in POW diaries, kept him grounded. The tunnel project united British, French, and Russian prisoners, bridging earlier tensions. They shared stories of home, using the tin cup to pass notes or tools, risking everything for hope. That the crisis of doubt gave way to clarity. James understood that enduring Holzminden meant preserving his humanity. The tunnel might fail, most did. Per Red Cross records, but the act of trying was victory enough. German oversight, inconsistent due to wartime strain, allowed such plans to take root, though guards caught many. James's tin cup, now a vessel for smuggled earth, embodied this shift. It was no longer just a tool for survival, but a symbol of defiance. His story, rooted in real accounts, reflects the countless POWs who faced despair yet found strength in small acts of resistance. This turning point redefined their struggle, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope could spark resilience. The armistice, signed on November 11, 1918, halted World War I's carnage, but for James Carter and thousands of POWs in Holzminden, freedom came slowly. Red Cross reports from 1918 describe a chaotic repatriation process. Over 20,000 Allied prisoners, including 3,200 at Holzminden, waited weeks for release as German infrastructure collapsed. James, a composite figure inspired by real posts like Captain Robert Campbell, emerged from the camp gaunt from years of malnutrition. German camp logs, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, record rations dropping to 500 calories daily in late 1918, with typhus and dysentery claiming lives until the end. James's body bore the toll. Medical reports from 1919 note that returning POS weighed 20 to 30% less than at capture. Liberation was no triumph. German guards, fearing reprisals, fled, leaving prisoners to endure forced marches to railheads, as documented in Campbell's memoirs. James's escape tunnel, like most, was discovered before completion, yet its impact lingered. POW diaries, including Lieutenant John Ransom's, highlight how such efforts, so often unsuccessful, fostered defiance. Digging with tin cups gave men purpose, a reason to endure. James carried his tin cup home, its etched cross a testament to survival. Returning to Britain, he faced a society eager to celebrate victory, but ill-equipped for the psychological scars of captivity. Medical records from 1919 describe POWs suffering from barbed wire disease, a term for the anxiety and isolation felt by survivors. The legacy of Holzminden's POWs extended beyond personal survival. Red Cross inspections in 1916 to 1918 exposed violations of the 1907 Hague Convention, particularly Article 7, which mandated adequate food and shelter. Holzminden's overcrowded barracks, lice-infested beds, and meager rations, sometimes just 200 grams of bread daily, became evidence for reform. These reports, cited in post-war conferences, directly influenced the 1929 Geneva Convention, which set stricter standards for POW treatment. The tin cup, a symbol of scarcity, also represented resilience. POWs like James shared its contents, traded with it, and hid tools within it, acts of solidarity noted in memoirs. These small victories shaped a narrative of endurance, proving that humanity could persist in dehumanizing conditions. James's return was bittersweet. He rebuilt his life, but memories of Holzminden lingered. Cold mornings, the weight of his tin cup, the faces of lost comrades, the broader impact of his experience, rooted in real accounts, resonated in history. The courage of POS, documented in diaries and Red Cross logs, showed that defiance, even in failure, left a mark. Their stories pushed nations to demand better protections, ensuring future prisoners might face less suffering. James's tin cup, now a relic on his shelf, was a quiet reminder of survival and the cost of war. His story, grounded in verified sources, reflects the legacy of thousands who endured Holzminden's hardships, shaping a more humane future. The ordeal of James Carter and thousands of POWs in Holzminden camp during World War I reshaped history's approach to wartime captivity. The 1907 Hague Convention promised humane treatment, but Red Cross reports from 1916 to 1918 exposed its failures. Holzminden's 3,200 prisoners, packed into spaces meant for 1,500, faced starvation rations, sometimes 600 calories daily, leading to widespread malnutrition and typhus. As confirmed by German camp logs in the Bundesarchiv, these violations sparked global scrutiny. Post-war conferences, citing Red Cross findings, drove the creation of the 1929 Geneva Convention, which mandated regular inspections, adequate food, and medical care for POWs. This legal shift, rooted in wholesome and suffering, aimed to prevent future abuses, ensuring captives were treated as humans, not pawns. James, a composite figure inspired by real posts like Captain Robert Campbell, returned to Britain in 1919, his tin cup a relic of survival. The cup, etched with a cross, symbolized his defiance, used to share rations, hide tunnel dirt, and anchor memories of home. British medical records from 1919 describe returning POWs as physically and mentally scarred, suffering from barbed wire disease, an early term for post-traumatic stress. James struggled to reintegrate, haunted by cold mornings and lost comrades, a reality echoed in Campbell's memoirs. Society, focused on victory, offered little support for these invisible wounds, highlighting an ethical gap. The recognition of such trauma, spurred by POW accounts, laid groundwork for modern mental health care for veterans. Ethically, Holzminden's story reveals the cost of dehumanization. German propaganda promised civilized camps, yet prisoners faced neglect, as Red Cross inspections confirmed. POWs countered this with small acts of humanity, sharing tin cups, staging secret plays, or digging tunnels. As Lieutenant John Ransom's diary notes, these acts preserved dignity, proving that resilience could outlast cruelty. The tin cup, a tool of survival, became a metaphor for hope. James's story, grounded in real accounts, shows how prisoners' defiance shaped their legacy. Their courage pushed nations to confront wartime ethics, demanding accountability for captors. The long-term impact of Holzminden endures. The 1929 Geneva Convention, strengthened by lessons from World War I, set a precedent for humanitarian law, influencing treaties like the 1949 Geneva Conventions. These frameworks, still in use, owe much to the documented suffering of POWs. James's tin cup, resting on his shelf, was a quiet reminder of survival and the need for compassion in war. His experience, and those of thousands like him, teaches that humanity persists even in the darkest conditions. Their legacy, captured in memoirs and Red Cross logs, underscores an ethical truth: treating others with dignity, even in conflict, defines our shared humanity.